Okay, great. Thank you, everyone, for coming to listen to Mondoro. Um, for any of you that don't know the story, we are 100% focused on exploration. And exploration is focused in Eastern Europe, so primarily Serbia and Bulgaria. The focus for the company as a result of being in that part of the world is really copper and gold. And really what we're trying to discover is a world-class style deposit, very similar to what's already in the Timok district, which is an example of the Bor system and, for example, Chukotopeki. I'll go through a lot of the information that's in here throughout the presentation. But really, let's start with what we're doing this year. So this year, really what everyone is looking for is the results from the current drill program that's going on in Serbia. That program is going on really from two partnerships that we're working with. One is the Japanese government, which is JOGMEC. We're doing a 7,000-meter program on the west side of the Bor complex in a project called Borsko. There, we expect to complete that 7,000 meters by the end of December, in which case we would put the results out by the end of February. And I'll go into that project and specifically what we're doing there. The next program that we're currently drilling is also in the southern half of the Timok complex. That particular program is being funded by Freeport. It's 3,500 meters. It's testing 4 targets, and I'll go into those in a little bit more detail later. That program will be finished by the end of this year. Even though we started in October, there's 3 rigs turning on the Freeport projects, and there's 2 rigs turning on the JOGMEC projects. And again, everything is anticipated to be completed by the end of December with results coming out in February. And then I'll also go into a little bit of detail about what we're doing in Bulgaria. And I think it's important to just keep in mind that this is an entire region. Timok is the first place we started, but there's certainly a lot more mineral potential in this district, and we demonstrate that by picking up more projects over the last 6 years. So the capital structure of the company is, I'd say, pretty good. We've got 69 million shares outstanding. By the end of the year, we anticipate having about 3.5 million in cash and treasury on Mondoro's part. And really the cash that we're using right now has been cash that's been funded by the partners into our treasury. And we're using that cash in order to complete the work programs that I've just talked about. So overall, we're trading at about 9 million enterprise value. You see that as a comparison to other explorers and prospect generators and developers. I think it's really important to recognize that it's a very large program that we have, and we actually spend on these projects over the last 5 years, $13.5 million, and yet our value is about 12 million. So you're really not paying for a lot of risk. You're getting partners that are funding these programs, and at the same time, if we're successful in exploration, there's obviously a very good opportunity for capital appreciation. So why are we in the Tethyan Belt? Well, this slide really kind of shows that. The western portion has got very good metallogenic potential. We certainly are focused on Timok, Panagorishta, and the Rhodops. Those are kind of the first 3 areas that we've entered, and we think have the best potential to make another important discovery for the district. When you look at Serbia and Bulgaria, they're very comparable countries in terms of population. GDP is obviously higher in Bulgaria. They're already in the European Union, whereas Serbia is a candidate, which means that they're in the process of harmonizing their laws with the European Union. But what's important in this slide is just to demonstrate that there's a lot of foreign investment in these 2 countries. It's not just Mondoro. It's certainly not just natural resources. There's a lot of Western European and North American money going into the countries. And I think that gives you a good sense that it is a safe place to invest and actually quite welcoming for mining, certainly with what we've seen in Serbia. So what does Bor look like? Well, this is it right here. If you kind of think back, Sudbury in the 1980s, that's really what Bor town looks like. It's about 35,000 people. The community is very much on side with mining. You can see the 2 smelter stacks that have actually been closed down and replaced by a new smelter, which has been partially funded by the Export Development Bank of Canada, interestingly. But it gives you a sense of what the community is like. And so here, the red The purple licenses within Timok are all Mondoro ground. We picked up this ground in 2011 simply because it was available. There was a 100-year-old mine there. The fact that the ground was available doesn't occur in every part of the world, and certainly it was before the Chukotopeki discovery. And so that was obviously very advantageous for us in terms of timing, and since then we've brought in JOGMEC, the Japanese government, for the licenses on the north side, and we've brought in Freeport for 2 of the licenses in South Timok, and we are still in discussions about bringing in more partnerships for the remaining 2 licenses in the center. Obviously very active in terms of M&A activity in this region. When you have a 1.8 billion ton porphyry that's discovered with a massive high sulfidation zone, it becomes a center of attention. So there has been turnover in terms of companies interested, and obviously the most recent one is the fact that Zijing has made a bid for Nevsun, which appears to be closing, and also the fact that Zijing also won the government tender with RTB Bor for the main 3 assets. So that's something to kind of keep in mind for the future in terms of capital investment in the region. Specifically, Mondoro's 2 partnerships are outlined here, which you can go over on our website. But essentially, you know, what are we doing? So these 4 licenses are in JV with JOGMEC. We're going to be finishing the 3rd year as of March of next year. And essentially where the focus is right here, target number 1, and also testing other targets within this license. And really what we've been doing with this 7,000 meters is trying to identify where these alteration systems exist, obviously which are the best geophysical tools to use to identify them, and once they're identified, structures, how to follow them to determine if there's high sulfidation and porphyry potential within the targets. We were extremely fortunate that we actually struck it with the first hole in Borsko and found one of the alteration systems, and these are the type of systems that are indicative of where porphyries occur and where high sulfidation systems occur. So they're not as pervasive as people may have first imagined. You really do have to focus your geophysics to find the alteration 500 meters undercover, and then once you find the alteration, then explore that alteration system to determine if there's a high sulfidation system and a porphyry system there. So it's a big mouthful. So South Timok specifically with Freeport. So Freeport is funding a 3,500 meter program. It's testing 4 key targets within these 2 licenses. We'll also be following up with a very important geophysical survey, which will take time to complete. And then it's anticipated there will be further drilling next year as a result of the geophysics. So essentially, we've got Freeport starting a 3-year partnership as of this year. JOGMEC will be completing a 3-year partnership as of next year. They will have to make a decision whether to go into phase 2, which would be a larger capital spend, primarily aimed at a feasibility study, and then of course a huge amount of exploration potential. And all of that is paid by partnerships, not by Mondoro. So really, as an equity shareholder, you participate in the company, but you don't have to pay for all of this exploration drilling. And the prize is very large systems, because obviously the partners that are funding these programs are looking for very large systems. We're not looking for small deposits. So the last and important part here is Bulgaria. And as I talked about previously, you know, moving along Timok is entirely staked. There's very little ground left available for anyone to become involved unless they become involved through a company like Mondoro. But there is more potential in this district, and Panagurishta is really the next important volcanic complex where you're going to find large-scale porphyries and these high sulfidation systems in this district. So we were very fortunate in that we've been scouting around for ground here for the last few years. We tendered for one asset, which is called Svoboda. We won that tender in October last year. We are waiting for the government to sign that contract, but within that license is an old mine that we believe is a high sulfidation system that had mined out 6 million tons of a % copper and 3 grams per ton gold. So when you see those types of zones, you basically, what you want to do is go back in there, drill test, determine if those old assays are actually real, and if they are, that's really the beginning of another really important project for the company. We're fully financed for that. As I mentioned, we have $3.5 million by the end of the year, and $2 million from our treasury is going to go to drill test specifically this license area, which has got some really fantastic historical results that we want to demonstrate are actually real. And then once we have those results in the market, I think that would be a good opportunity for investors to reevaluate the valuation of the company. So with that, I'm going to leave it, and certainly happy to answer questions at our booth.